and 314 for a shooting at Century Theaters. They're saying somebody's shooting in the auditorium.
Roger, keep your fires west of the smoke. You're cleared hot. An officer hit. Send me the world.
Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again.
Welcome to Tactical Tangents.
Welcome back to Tactical Tangents. This is Mike. This episode is brought to you by Ride-On Optics. Ride-On is bringing you high-quality glass at a great value. I use and trust their scopes, binoculars, and red dot sights, and you can too with their unconditional lifetime warranty. If you ever have a problem with their gear, they will replace it, not repair it. Finish up your next build and keep a little extra cash on hand for ammo so you can actually go out and shoot that thing. Find your next optic at rideonoptics.com.
And this is Jim. This episode is also brought to you by Manus. We've talked a lot about the tactical fantasy on this podcast, and one of the quickest ways to break your tactical fantasies and actually improve your performance is by getting real feedback. One of the ways you can do that is with Manus. You're not going to get better at shooting on your own. You need practice, data, and coaching. And you need to make the most of your ammo with good live and dry fire training. Manus is a family of training devices that tracks you while you train. It times and tracks everything you do in a drill and coaches you as you go. It is indispensable to taking your shooting to the next level. Go find them on manusx.com.
So tonight's debrief is going to be about a hostage rescue situation that happened back in the day, 1991, April, which as it happens, we're recording this in April. I don't know when we'll actually get it out, but so we can say, 31 years ago, I think? If my math is correct. I'm not good at mathing, but... happened at a Good Guys appliance store. If you don't remember Good Guys, it was kind of like a Circuit City or a Best Buy. This was a similar sort of place. And essentially 4 dudes go in and take the entire store hostage. There was 41 total people, employees and customers. And this thing went down for about 8-9 hours. This happened in Northern California and Sacramento. There was actually a hostage rescue that occurred here. You know, there's a lot of hostage situations that happen throughout the country, but not as many of those actually go to a tactical resolution, right? Usually we try to slow things down and we try to do some negotiating and hopefully get people to surrender. This is one of those scenarios where we actually did an assault, which is pretty rare, and it was large scale to happen at a large venue like that with that many people, with that many bad guys. That's not your typical hostage rescue scenario where like the drunken a-hole takes his ex-girlfriend or ex-wife and the kids hostage and he says, you know, I'm going to kill him if you don't, you know, let us go kind of thing, right? Different kind of thing, different scale of problem. And this holds the reputation as one of the largest hostage rescue operations in American law enforcement. I haven't verified that. That's like a lot of the things that we do here. We're kind of just regurgitating the Reader's Digest, the wiki on it, because we try to give you some editorial on it along the way. We try to make it a kind of bite-sized, consumable debrief and point you towards where there's more info if you want to get that, right? So we acknowledge that this is kind of a compressed, scratch the surface sort of thing. But we do that kind of on purpose. So again, supposedly the largest or one of the largest hostage rescue operations in American law enforcement history. I believe that. That's a lot of people. But I haven't done the work to actually verify that.
And it gets complicated. Like, you could say that Waco was a hostage rescue operation, maybe not a successful one,
True.
But it might have been bigger. So, you know, it depends on who you ask. There are a couple things I want you to keep in mind as we work through this specific case. One, hostage rescue is a core mission task. In the military, we call that METAL, Mission Essential Task List, of basically all SWAT teams, right? That's why SWAT teams exist, is to be able to do things like hostage rescue. But where does this fit in your training and planning? Now, a typical city municipal SWAT team spends most of its time actioning, like the things it actually does day to day. In my understanding is warrant service and barricaded subjects. And then when they get training, what are they training for? Well, it depends agency to agency, but I get a sense that hostage rescue has kind of fallen out of favor since active shooter stuff with Columbine and Newtown and stuff, and also with 9/11, toward more rampage murder scenarios, suicide bomber scenarios, kind of the sexier counterterrorism stuff. hostage taking hasn't gone away. And it's a very specialized skill set that is separate and distinct from the other skill sets. Mike's talked about this in the past, where you have to kind of procedurally and mentally shift modes, right? Now, it might be tempting to assume that some other agency is going to handle this, like the FBI's hostage rescue team or something. That's great. The hostage rescue team is based in Quantico, Virginia. Where are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, you could be in Washington, D.C., and they're still, depending on traffic, like hours away. So, if you're in Sacramento, for example, it's going to take a minute. Now, there are regional counterterrorism task forces and the FBI field office SWAT teams and stuff, but still, you have to consider that you might be it. You might be the most capable asset, certainly until you're relieved by a more capable asset. And in some cases, that might be an individual patrol officer or a lone deputy or lone state trooper. Like, you're it until somebody else shows up. And that's a concept you kind of have to have your head around, that you're it until you're not, right? Final point, Mike's going to talk about this as we go, but a lot of SWAT doctrine, whether it's called this or not, tends to follow a flow, right? Time, slow things down, talk to them, negotiate. Do we negotiate with terrorists? When it's convenient, yes, we do, right? Tear gas, inject some fog and friction for them, sometimes literal fog or smoke or tear gas, whatever, right? And then finally, tactical assault, right? And that's when you send in the cavalry and the snipers and the send in the stack of SWAT dudes to go in, somersault through the windows and shoot them up. There's a reason for that progression. It's to give many off-ramps to the perpetrator. It is inherently de-escalatory, but there's more to it than that. It's also meant to buy you time, right? You need that time to reconnoiter, figure out what the hell's going on, to plan, to rehearse, to deploy surveillance, to deploy forces, and then ultimately to assault. That buys you time that you need to make this successful. Now, the bad guys get a vote. They might speed up that timeline real fast, and you're going to see that. This is a literary foreshadowing where you may not get a say. You may not get to slow it down, and you might have to go right then. And you also have to have a very clear picture in your head of when is it time to go and when is it time to slow, right? And that's a big recurring theme on Tactical Tangents.
Yeah. One of the other doctrinal things for SWAT teams or tactical teams, and really just even for patrol resources, is contain, isolate, evacuate, negotiate, right? It's another kind of like Jim is saying, time, talk, tear gas, and tactics. The trick in all of this, and Jim alluded to this as well, where we haven't got, at least my team has not gone away from hostage rescue. We still plan for these scenarios pretty regularly, but I mean, what percentage does that look like? Of our training hours, there's a lot of stuff that we just have to, like boxes we have to check every year just as a matter of liability, right? We have to do a flashbang refresher every year and less lethal refresher and all of our qualifications and, taser update and beanbag update and whatever, all these things that constantly get thrown at us.
I have to take fire extinguisher training.
Pull the pin and
literally, I have to fill out a form about pull the pin, aim, squeeze, spray, or whatever.
You bring up a good one. That's actually a good one, Jim. Fit testing. I have to go make sure my face has been approximately the same size for the past, few decades. And every year I have to go make sure my gas mask still fits me. And I have to take a stupid test where I have to read off a piece of paper and lift my head up and down and turn to the side and bend over at the waist to see if my gas mask fits. That sounds really important, right? But on any given week,
they make me bend over and cough. That's strange. All you have to do is move your face around.
On any given week, I'm testing that thing because we're going into places where we've thrown a bunch of tear gas. So
I will know if there's a problem.
Yeah, I'll know if my gas mask isn't working. But there's a lot of boxes we have to check, and somewhere in that list of things we have to do is hostage rescue, in addition to warrant service, in addition to active shooter stuff and medical stuff, and a lot of what we do, even though we still do a little bit of warrant service, we've done a lot more manhunting type of operations, which gets really dynamic. But to Jim's point, like anything, we've got different templates. Is this a scenario where I have to go right now? And a hostage rescue scenario, if it's time to assault, the rest is pretty straightforward for guys like me. You give me the go command and I'm just squeezing the guy in front of me, unless I am the guy in front, and then we're going to go get some. That part's easy. It's the decision making that leads up to that point that gets really hard. And we have operations on a regular basis where we're having that conversation. Hey, we're treating this like a hostage rescue situation. Well, it seems like the victim probably had an opportunity to leave. We don't think they're there against their will. We're going to call this a barricaded person with an innocent bystander inside. Not really a hostage. Okay, now it's a hostage rescue. Like, all right, so we have to keep constantly changing gears on things, and that happens, right? So think about that as we go. And
the difference, I just want to be clear, the difference is not academic. In a military context, it's the difference between throwing a frag grenade and throwing a flashbang into the room, which, by the way, has happened.
Yeah. So back to the good guys, 1991 hostage situation in Sacramento, California. These 4 gunmen were Vietnamese refugees who fled Vietnam as immigrants to the U.S.
And you may, doing the research on this, hear them called Thai or from Thailand. And the thing is, after Vietnam, like there was a diaspora of people getting out of Vietnam and they spread all over the place. And so among other things, they have some connection to Thailand, but they were Vietnamese by nationality.
Right. There's 3 brothers. They were 21, 19, and 17 years old. And one of the 17-year-old's friend, who was also 17. So adults, but young adults, and 2 of them technically juvenile, but 17, old enough to know what they're doing, right?
Fighting aged, right? And we've taled about this in the past. The difference between military aged and fighting aged. They're old enough to pick up a gun. They're old enough to kill you.
Yeah. The 17-year-olds had been kicked out of school. They did some theft and some vandalism. Apparently they tried to set the building on fire at their school. I think that's a red flag of some form. The oldest brother was a dropout. The other guy was still in school, but he was going to like a continuation school. He wasn't doing real well. So these guys were definitely, you could say, troubled young men in some capacity, right? I don't know about like mental illness stuff, but certainly not thriving, I guess. And they had a car. They had 3 pistols and a shotgun. All of them were purchased legally after a background check and a waiting period, which California requires. And these 4 guys, in the aftermath of this, it came to light that essentially their motive became something along the lines of they were frustrated because they couldn't get good jobs and they didn't speak very good English, and basically they were mad and they wanted to go seek revenge back in their home country, and so they were pissed off and they wanted to get famous and do this siege. The media reported initially that it was like a botched robbery, but it became pretty clear in the aftermath that their intent was never to commit a robbery. It was to get a bunch of hostages and become famous. And maybe they had some distorted sense of they would actually get the helicopter and the body armor and the guns and the millions of dollars that they were asking for to go, fight for their homeland or whatever it was.
And this is important, right? You're trying to build your situational awareness about the mental state of the people you're dealing with, right? Are they robbers? Are they logically trying to get away with money? Are they trying to leave the scene? Or are they trying to do something to the hostages to get attention? Right, and that's going to change my decision calculus.
Yeah, and Jim, you've got a thing that you talk about motivations in terrorism. I don't know if that's a thing you can recap real quick, but there's like political terrorism, there's ideology side of it, there's economic stuff.
Yeah, all kinds of different things motivate an individual to do terroristic stuff, right? And fundamentally, terrorism has a political slant to it, but what gets someone into a terrorist group is often very similar to like cult recruiting, right? There's a grievance, they play up the grievance, they play up a sense of belonging, And all of that is kind of moot at the point where we're shooting at each other. But up until then, if I'm trying to make it harder for them to recruit, I want to know how they're thinking and how they're doing it. And when I'm reacting to a scene, I want to know, are they fundamentally rational or not? Right. That's probably my biggest thing that I'm trying to sort out. And I got to sort it out quickly. And this is actually kind of funny. It's the opposite of the movie Die Hard, where the German Hans Gruber and stuff go in and they're like, oh, we're international political terrorists. And what they're really doing is they're stealing bearer bonds, right? In this case, it's kind of the opposite. They looked like a robbery, but they were really kind of more terrorists or just hooligan. It's not really clear. Even now, it's not really clear, right?
Right. And it's not really clear, but it's still, again, this is relevant stuff because when people think of terrorism, they're thinking of like ISIS or Al Qaeda doing their thing. And well, this still can kind of fit into these templates. And like Jim is saying, it's important to kind of wrap your head around, what are these guys trying to do? Are they trying to escape? Is this happening because we cornered them? Because that's someone that you might be able to reason with time when they start to realize that their options are dwindling and they're like, hey man, I didn't really come in here to kill a bunch of people. I came in here to get some shit and leave. And now I'm desperate and cornered. Well, I might be able to speak to that in a different way than these guys are on a suicide mission of some form. Right. So they enter the appliance store at about 1 p.m. and they herd all the customers and the staff into a group. They fired a few shots into the ceiling to, kick this thing off, just like in the movies, I guess.
And there's a context clue, right? When people are shooting actively, are they shooting up into the ceiling or are they shooting into you, right? And that might change what I'm willing to do.
Yep. There was an employee who was able to escape. He was sent to lock the doors and he was able to skedaddle.
And there's a key pro tip here on survival and escape stuff. The time to escape is early. Yep. Your odds of survival way high in the first 30 seconds and way low 8 hours into it.
And that's one of those decisions you want to make. You don't want to delay that in your mind about, should I push the big red button? Some people are afraid to push the big red button. Maybe push it. So the 911 calls started coming in around 1:30 or so. There were tactical officers, I think Sacramento County at the time, I don't know if they still do, they called their SWAT team like SED. It stood for, Specialized Enforcement Division or something like that. But a tactical team, a SWAT team, whatever you want to call it. Each area's kind of got their own acronym for it. But they happened to be gearing up for another operation. They were going to go serve a warrant somewhere. And so essentially got diverted to this incident, right? They started to rally there. And obviously the media started showing up. Crisis negotiators started showing up. And the media was able to get close enough that they were actually able to capture and live stream hostages lined up in the front of the store behind the windows and being used as human shields.
And the media is kind of a key thing here. Remember, this was 1991. TV news was starting to get the hang of live feeds and exciting on-scene reporting. Now, this wasn't the first time that media was around. Media was around even during the Munich Olympic hostage event, right? And it was a factor there. But this is one of the first cases that I know of where the perps watched themselves and the law enforcement response live on TV. And this is after this, we started getting real serious about operational security and where were the cameras relative to where the operators were, right?
And this is something that goes kind of both ways, because on one hand, operationally, I don't want the cameras to show where I'm at if the bad guys are able to watch that, right? They're in an electronics/appliance store where they literally had TVs all over the walls and stuff. In fact, at one point, and this is why I say it's a two-way street, at one point there was actually a plan in here to put one of the hostages that was released, put him on TV in hopes that the bad guys would gather near the TVs to watch what he was saying on TV, which would have been an advantageous place for us to execute a rescue or an assault, right? As if they were all clumped up in one spot, eyes focused at the TV screens, and we can come in behind them. So that plan did not work, but it was something that was considered. So you can use it to your advantage. But the point is, either way, you need to be deliberate about that. So the team starts to get there. They're trying to get organized. Snipers get set up. A crisis team gets set up at a business next door. The team's able to get a floor plan of the business. They're able to look at where the alarms and all the security sensors and stuff are going to be, and how they can get to where the hostages were. There's a couple things that they were able to do. When they got lined up in the business next door, they made some noise that the bad guys were able to gain some situational awareness of. So operational security point there is be quiet when it's time to be quiet. They were able to position a mirror through some ceiling tiles from the building next door, or the business next door, so they can actually see a little bit of what was going on inside. It didn't prove to be super helpful, but it was not nothing. And they were also able to insert a camera into a small area, which again, limited visibility, but not nothing. So that's kind of the buildup of SWAT, or the tactical team, getting into the area and set up, and the negotiations kind of went from there. So crisis negotiators obviously doing their thing. They're trying to get a peaceful resolution. At the same time, they're trying to gain intelligence that's going to be useful for us if we do have to go to guns. They weren't having a lot of success, but I mentioned earlier the hostage takers were making some kind of crazy. They wanted like a 50-troop transport helicopter. They wanted millions of dollars in guns and body armor, and they wanted to go to Thailand. And
in the helicopter, they wanted the helicopter to take them to Thailand.
Right.
Well, that sounds reasonable. I'd give it to them. I'd be like, screw it. Here's your helicopter.
Yeah.
Fly west. You got this. So that sounds very reasonable. But it's a good example of why we talk about time, talk, tear gas is in talking back and forth. We get some insight on the hostage takers from those negotiators. And this is a thing where like Manning comes up. And think about all the things Mike just talked about. Things like the technical surveillance aspect of this. If I can get some eyes and ears into the room, that's huge. I got to hire nerds for my SWAT team. I got to hire negotiators, and not just a negotiator, negotiators, several, right? One guy to do the talking, and then one guy to take those insights and pass that to the decision makers in the team. Hey, here's what we're seeing right now, right?
yeah, so one of the main demands that remained consistent and was reasonably easy to deliver on was that they wanted body armor. I don't love the idea of giving bad guys body armor, but if I'm shooting a rifle and they have soft armor, it's not a huge factor. And at least if I know it's there, I mean, in a hostage rescue scenario, typically I'm going to go for headshots anyway. So it's not a deal breaker. I don't love it, but that was their decision back at the time was, hey, they want some body armor. Why don't we pass them some vests? And so at one point there was an agreement reached where they were going to release the agreement was actually for 9 hostages to get released in exchange for some body armor. And
but I do want you to think though about your list of what you're willing to give a hostage taker and what you're not willing to give a hostage taker. There are some agencies that on no planet would give hostage takers body armor, right? Yeah. And that's where having some exercises and be like, well, what'll happen if we do? Think through that, right? Exercise that as part of your training. And if you're going to provide something, exercise how you're going to provide it. What tactics are you going to employ in your provision of an item?
yeah.
I'll leave that at that, right?
So they made this agreement. Okay, we're going to give them a vest. They're going to release 9 hostages. They didn't release all of the hostages at once, though. The woman who came out to get the vest got it from an officer who stripped down to his underwear and locked it up. He had to show them that they were unarmed. And so he walks over with a vest in his underwear and hands it to this lady who left her kids behind to come and get it.
I want to paint the picture for you. It was a bright blue banana hammock and blue sunglasses, and it was goddamn magnificent.
The thing you got to ask yourself is like, did he put that in his car, like in the trunk somewhere, like for the just in case? Like, if
you
I
don't get to pick the day, you're going to have to be the hero.
You know, or is that just how he dresses every day, or was it like, hey man, you drew that short straw and well, shit, they don't even realize that I'm wearing this ridiculous.
It was the early 90s. Cocaine's a hell of a drug. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. So this lady leaving her kids behind comes out, gets the vest, goes back. There's actually live TV footage of this. She takes the body armor back inside, and she is released with her 2 kids. She's able to leave. Over the next couple of hours, some other hostages were ultimately released. And as they were coming out, the hostage takers started telling them, like, hey, they said they're going to start killing people soon. There were several shots fired, but at this point, as these hostages are trickling out, no one had been injured. There were no shots fired at any of the hostages at that point. One thing that the guys were shooting, there were some reports about they were shooting out the security cameras in the store. And at one point, because Jim brings up, hey, are we willing to get them body armor? And like the first thing that comes to my mind is, can we give them something they think is body armor but isn't? Well, they actually shot the vest and tested it, according to some of the hostages. So that's could have been called out on that plan. Might have screwed themselves on that one. At one point, there was some agreement or some discussion among the negotiators about like, hey, we want to be able to take our body armor and our weapons to prison with us if we go to prison.
Knock yourself out.
And the hostage negotiator was like, well, you know, if we do this peacefully and you come out, like we can negotiate a shortened sentence, a mitigated sentence for the peaceful resolution and all of this. And the guy doing the communicating at that point was essentially cool with that. He was like, yeah, that sounds good. I'm good with that. But like these other guys are not. And at that point, or around that point, there was a loss in communication. And then some other dude, one of the other four guys, gets on the phone and he's like, I'm in charge now. And basically from there out, things started to go south. So at this point, we've built up to about 7 or 8 hours into this, right? This all started around 1 o'clock. And now we're at that 8 to 9 p.m. time frame. So this has been going on for a while, right? The final hostage of the 9 that was going to get released ultimately gets shot in the leg, and he's told, like, okay, you can go. And so he has to drag himself out of the store with a gunshot wound. And that was the first hostage that was harmed by these guys. And again, like I said, this happened after the new guy is now in charge. He was calling himself number 1, I guess. That guy's instructions when he was released was to give their demands to the police and to the media. So he was actually put on TV. I mentioned that plan earlier where they were hoping that maybe they can gather the bad guys in one place. They put him on TV and he told the media what they wanted and what they were saying. And everything up until that point suggested that these guys were going to start killing people, and that they were just trying to draw attention to the troubles in their home country and that they wanted to get famous. And this is a big deal, right? This is where we distinguish between cornered criminals and guys on a suicide mission, right? That are not thinking clearly and who are just there to make a statement. This is Mike, and I just want to jump in real quick to announce our new partnership with Brink Drones. Brink has created life-saving capabilities in a drone that can break windows, fly into houses and confined spaces, and even crash into things and stay in the air with advanced pilot assistance that does not use GPS. Brink drones are built in the USA. It has night vision and IR that can function in blacked out and zero light conditions. It can flip itself back over, and it is a flying cell phone with two-way communication and a live video feed. It can even carry and drop off items for hostage negotiators with the payload feature. Brink has a really cool and compelling heritage that came to be after the 1 October mass shooting at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, and they are committed in their mission to leverage technology to save lives. And I can tell you firsthand that their drones will do just that by flying into places that are too dangerous to risk human lives. If you work in public safety, your agency needs to see what this drone can do. Go check out Brink Drones at brinkdrones.com, or feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to tell you all about them. Again, that's Brink, BRINC, drones.com. There's a concept that, as we wrap this up, I'm going to talk about a little bit called the doomed captives doctrine. And this is where we start to differentiate those two scenarios, right? The criminal hostage scenario and the doomed captives, where no matter what, people are going to get hurt or killed in this. And so really what we're trying to do is reduce or mitigate the damage done. But that no matter what, people are going to probably get killed. Now, I don't know how well that was a thing in the 90s, if that was something that they had that label for, but the law enforcement people on the scene at that point made what I think was the correct call in understanding that philosophy and essentially authorizing a hostage rescue or an assault based on the information up until that point.
Yeah, this concept has been around since forever, and I, growing up, always heard it as the Israeli doctrine. I don't know that they invented it, but it's more a philosophy than a doctrine, right? It is there to inform your decision making, and specifically, it's something to inform senior decision makers about what risk you're accepting and what risk you're not accepting. Rescuing hostages, the decision to assault, is risky. You might lose some hostages. You might lose some assaulters. And we talked about this in the Iran hostage rescue episode, that hostage rescue is inherently dangerous. It is dangerous to be a hostage. Like, that's the idea, right? So you have to assume, and this is hard for people to get their heads around, that the hostages are already dead and that you're just trying to save, in some sense, as many as you can. And that gets you into weird calculus, right? Like, well, maybe if we save half of them, that's a win. Maybe if we save a couple of them, that's a win. You may not get all of them. And this came up actually, not even a hostage case. If you remember, there was a soccer team in Thailand that ended up stuck down in a cave network that had flooded, and they had to come up with all kinds of crazy ways to get these guys through the 5 kilometers of flooded caves. And the decision, as it was presented to the senior decision makers in Thailand, was like, this will be a success if we get half of them out alive. And that caused everyone to kind of reframe how they thought about it, right? And that's what you have to do when we're talking about hostage rescue. You may not get everyone out, but you still got to do something. Just sitting there and letting them all get executed is that's a bad doctrine. Let's not do that. Let's do something useful, right?
And maybe doctrine isn't the right word for it. And I know in a military context that idea floated around for a long time. I don't know when or how it got popularized by law enforcement, but certainly these guys seem to understand it. And to Jim's point about doing a hostage rescue, you know, there's some guy at the scene, some commander who is a decision maker, and he's holding that bag, right? And so the thought is, well, if we do nothing, maybe they'll give up. And if we do something and a bunch of people get killed, then that's going to be spun as like our bad, right? That we caused that, essentially, because maybe they could have negotiated a peaceful resolution, and maybe they could have. But if we wait for the bad guys to act and they start killing people, we're behind the curve. And so the idea is, if we take initiative, we might be able to mitigate some of that and use that to our advantage to diminish the loss of life, right? And again, like, I'm not saying that is a bag I ever want to hold. That's a hard thing. But these are the decisions that come to bear in scenarios like this. The idea, when you consider this doomed captives concept, is the longer we wait, the more desperate they're going to feel, the more cornered they're going to feel, the more time they're going to have to barricade and fortify their positions, potentially set up booby traps or change intelligence, right? If we've gathered intelligence, we think all the hostages are in a certain spot, and then we wait longer, maybe they're in a different spot. Like, why not go with the information that we have available that we know is accurate right now before it changes? There's a lot of things that potentially we gain advantage from if we act on the information right here and now, as opposed to we wait. And one of the classic examples of something like this that we think about is, you know, nowadays, if you were to think about an Al-Qaeda or ISIS sort of event where they were going to come take over some place and make this big display of, you know, jihad or whatever, they're waiting for as many cameras to get there, for as much chaos and destruction as possible to make it this big glorious thing. And we don't want to give them that, right?
Yeah. And, you know, just to be clear, doomed captive is not an absolute. And for me, it honestly doesn't change a whole lot in my decision making, but it may help to contextualize and frame the situation more clearly specifically those senior decision makers who need to understand the risk of action and the risk of inaction.
Yeah. And for not being absolute, I mean, absolutely, you can't see what I did there? Yeah. For not being an absolute, I mean, of course, you can't sit there and say, oh, they are definitely doomed, because we don't have a crystal ball. We can't predict the future, right? But philosophically, it's supposed to get you thinking about those what ifs. And I've told you that we've had hostage scenarios where, hey, the hostage rescue is on, the hostage rescue is off. It's on, it's off. It's on, it's off. Like, what do we, and those are stressful because you're thinking, okay, we're going to go. And then, no, you're not. You're going to wait 6 more hours, 8 more hours, it's, in the heat or the cold or whatever it is. And again, you constantly have to be framing that and asking those difficult questions. So that last hostage that got shot in the leg as he was released, they started talking about a sniper-initiated assault plan where a sniper was going to have the opportunity to fire on one of the gunmen, and he would essentially call the shot and initiate the hostage rescue. Somewhere a little bit before 10 o'clock, another hostage was shot and sent outside, and they started basically saying that we're going to be flipping coins to figure out who's going to live and who's going to die.
Well, it just got a lot more exciting. Just got a lot more movie plotty, right? Yeah. So the bad guys get a vote, and they very clearly voted at this point, right? They did the escalating. So that made the decision matrix a lot simpler. So when we say you have to train and exercise for hostage rescue, this is a good example of the sort of thing you have to train for. Does your own command and control have a clear picture of what should trigger an assault? What should get us to go right now, even if we were waiting for some perfect set of scenarios, right? Do the assaulters have a clear picture of when to act, even if they haven't been directed to? Is the sniper clear in his head that, hey, if I have a clear shot and they have started shooting, then I need to act, right? Rather than hold. In other hostage rescues that have been successful, they waited for some big distraction. They'd fly helicopters over, or there's one case of a train that got hijacked. They flew military jets over real loud to be a distraction for the assault. So sometimes you are waiting on purpose for something like that, but otherwise everyone needs to know when it's time to go. And it's not enough just to exercise the assaulters. You have to exercise the decision makers.
Yeah, like I said, the go command for guys like me is the easy part. Once we're going, I know exactly what I got to do. It's everything that leads up to that decision that is really, really hard. So at this point, they're flipping coins. They're talking about killing all the hostages. At various times, some of the hostages were put on the phone with the police, and they were telling the cops that they're going to start executing people. There was a discussion about delivering another vest, and they tied up a female hostage with like electrical wire, like speaker wire or something like that. And they basically tethered her so that she couldn't get away, sent her out to go retrieve another vest from the police to bring back in. And at this point, the sniper-initiated assault occurs. The door was just, and this is on live TV. We'll post some links to the YouTube video. You can actually watch this part of it occur. The door was just partially open when the sniper takes his shot. The round hits the door, and the suspect reacts to it, but doesn't go down. It does not incapacitate him. The reports are a little bit conflicting about this, and I'm not sure which one is the most accurate. Some say that he missed entirely. It looks like the guy did get shot. I saw also a report that it hit him in the ear, but in either case, it did not incapacitate him, which is at the end of the day, that's the part that matters, right? The sniper, potentially we had 4 guys, and had that shot been effective, we would have only had 3. Now, shit happens. I'm not throwing stones at that. Just telling you that we still have 4 guys in play, and we'll talk about some potential lessons from that towards the end here. So that shot breaks, and the gunmen immediately start shooting people. The assault occurs from the business next door. They throw a flashbang. They make entry. There's a little bit of fog and friction that happens here that that speaker wire that the lady was tethered to. As the assault team was moving up, they went to grab her and get her out of the way and ended up tripping one of the guys, like right as he was going through the doorway, and one of the gunmen fires a shotgun in his direction. So the entry team actually thought that he got shot in the face and fell straight to the ground. That ended up not being the case. None of the cops were shot in this case. But again, it's one of those fog and friction things. If you're going through the front door on these sort of events, you have to assume that you're taking rounds, right? You have to assume that someone's going to get hit. So pretty quickly, within about 30 seconds, and there's actually audio of this. I thought about playing the audio from the hostage rescue, but you can't really hear a lot except for gunshots, and it kind of goes on for a little bit. But within about 30 seconds or so, 3 of the 4 hostage takers are down, and they start a systematic search for the 4th. Like, where's the last guy? They eventually locate him. He was unarmed at the time that they found him. He was wearing the first vest that got delivered, and he had a 223 wound to, I think, the abdomen or torso somewhere. When they turned him over is when they saw it. He survived, and he was arrested and charged and convicted of a slew of crimes that earned him a hefty life sentence.
I'm curious, given California, whether he served 6 or 8 months of that life sentence. I'm curious how long he actually stayed in.
Right, out on parole.
So a big concept I want to reinforce here is the word accountability. This is a thing you got to think about in hostage rescue in a way you don't have to think about it everywhere else, right? You have to immediately and positively account for all the hostages and all the hostage takers. And if you can't, there's a bunch of other stuff you have to do right gosh darn now, right? And secondarily to that, in a law enforcement context, you have to account for your actions and your rounds. That never goes away, right?
Speaking of accountability, now I'm second guessing if the guy was shot in the abdomen. I don't know where the 223 wound. What I read was that they turned him over and discovered that he had been shot with a rifle. I'm not actually sure where, so don't quote me on the abdomen part. But he survived.
In or at the store.
Right.
Is where he was shot. There you go.
Yeah, in Sacramento. That's where. But the point is, he lived, right? And he's still serving his life sentence, several life sentences, I suppose. In the aftermath of all of this, a total of 10 hostages were shot. There was a pregnant woman who had a miscarriage during the event, so they're counting that as 11 total casualties. 3 of the hostages that were shot were killed. And I don't know if they count the miscarriage in the 3 that were killed, or if that would be a 4th. Now this, again, is a pretty large scale hostage rescue / assault, and this is not your everyday, which is part of the reason that we're talking about it. But it's certainly not outside the realm of possibility for any tactical team. And like Jim said, even though your day-to-day stuff might be a lot more routine, this is that high severity, low frequency event that you still have to anticipate and train for. And the time and the talking stuff, when it comes to decision making at those command levels, right? The executive level decision making, slowing things down and de-escalating are viable. And a lot of times those can be successful, but there's always got to be a tactical option because, like Jim said, enemy gets a vote. And that's something that you have to set up and stage early, because as we saw here, things went really, really fine for 8-9 hours, and then all of a sudden things went sideways. And so all that work has to be done in parallel, right? The hostage negotiators are gaining intelligence. They're trying to slow things down. They're trying to buy time. They're trying to reason with these people, get some insight into their mental state. But at the same time, we're getting our ducks in the row for the what if, right? And there's a lot of moving parts to that, to include things like, okay, so we're all set up, and now we've been set up for 6, 8, 9 hours. Guys are getting hungry. They're getting tired. They're getting, fatigued. They've been on gun for however long. There's ups and downs. We might have to relieve them at some point.
On both sides of the event, right? That's also true for the hostages. It's also true for the hostage takers, right? And during this time, you also have a little bit of time to stage resources, right? I can get the ambulances on site. I can get a helicopter sitting there ready to evacuate people. And I think quick evacuation is one of the things that kept the body count as low as it ended up being.
But a lot of things have to happen in parallel. And as soon as those things start happening, again, you got to start thinking about the next step. Okay, so we have a crisis entry team and they're staged and they're ready to go. Do we want more than one? Maybe we stage another one from another entry point. What happens when those guys need relief? Who's going to come relieve us? Is it one of the FBI teams, or is it an adjacent municipality or another county team that can come and help us and offer mutual aid? What is the handover going to look like, right? When one SWAT team hands it to another SWAT team, what does that look like? And we learned some lessons about that the hard way in my agency, and we've had to do it since then, and it's actually gone pretty smooth. But that's something that, people might not use the same terminology. They might have a whole different plan in place. Their problem solving might be different, right? So there's a lot of things that you have to consider in that big picture. So it's something that you definitely don't want to leave out of your recurring training. The Doom Captives thing. It is easy for quote unquote tactical guys, like tactical operators, if you will, to be like, well, we should just go save the hostages and do the thing with the thing. There's a maturity component that has to come with that gung-ho-ness, right? Where you say like, yeah, but once you write that check, like there's no going back, right? Like things are going to go, and however that plays out, like we own it now, right? So you don't want to take that lightly. But the big thing is making sure that prior to events like this, you have essentially trained your executive leadership and your decision makers on these possibilities, so that you're not trying to negotiate with them to help them understand what you might already know as the tactician, right? You might have a really good understanding of that stuff. They may not. And my agency, our tactical team commander is a lieutenant that gets rotated around every, couple years. So we get a brand new lieutenant, and the TLs have to start a whole new process of training their boss, right? So that's something that you need to make sure that you're building into your training as well, so that when the time to perform arrives, right, that whole thing. One of the hostages wrote a book about this incident. And remember, I told you about the flipping of coins to determine the fate of the hostages. The book, her name is Lisa Joseph, and the book is called Heads or Tails, A True Hostage Story of Terror, Torture, and Ultimate Survival. There was a movie that came out just a couple years ago in 2019 called A Clear Shot. I have not seen it. I don't know how accurate it is or if it's any good or anything like that, but there was a movie that came out about it. And there's been a couple TV series, like police shootout type TV series and documentaries or something on the History Channel about it. So we'll put some links to those. You can find the video and the audio stuff that we've talked about, but that is, in a nutshell, what happened at the Good Guys Hostage Rescue event in Sacramento back in 91. So a couple takeaways. We've talked a lot about Doom Captives, and I think along with that, we also need to just define what a hostage rescue or a hostage situation is. I mentioned that we've had scenarios where we've gone back and forth between this is a barricade with an extra person, an extra innocent bystander, versus a hostage rescue, right? So there's three basic things that you need to call something a hostage situation. One is they have to have access to hostages, not just be talking about it. There actually have to be people in there that are potentially in danger. Two, they have to be threatening to harm them. So you need to have some viable threat, not just that they're there and you just assume that he's got hostages inside. Like, are they actually talking about that? Or is there anything occurring that suggests that they are going to harm the people that they have access to? And then finally, the means to follow through. So again, if they're talking about shooting people, like, do they have guns? Are they talking about stabbing people? Do they have knives? Those sorts of things. So those are the three basic elements you need to define something as a hostage rescue thing. And that sounds really simple, but again, you kind of got to read into the psychology of the person a little bit, which brings us to another common theme in this, which is de-escalation and crisis negotiations. Jim said, we don't negotiate with terrorists, right? Well, kind of.
It's complicated. It's complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated. Again, these are opportunities to gather intel, and there are opportunities for us to have a say in the timeline. Oh, you want some water? You want some pizza? You want bulletproof vests? Oh, you want a helicopter? Okay, well, I'm working on it, but just so you know, the helicopter is going to take me about, hey, boss, how long did you say before SWAT's set up? Okay, like 45 minutes. Okay. It's going to be about 45 minutes before the helicopter can get on scene. Right? So we can use some of that to our advantage. And without giving up a lot of secrets, you can also play those cards in a favorable way. If, for example, someone has to come out and get these things that they're negotiating for. In crises like this, there are going to be ups and downs, and you can use the ups to think about like your contingency planning and know about what you're missing or what, when you might have to go, but you use the downs to also maybe capitalize on either them being distracted or potentially actually getting that peaceful resolution, which ultimately is the goal. To be super clear, that is always the goal, right? And then the final thing that I want to talk about on this, and just kind of tangentially, because I don't know all of the details about that sniper shot through the door. One report that I saw said that it hit the door frame. Another said that it went through the glass. Another said that he was trying to shoot through the opening in the door, like he might not have meant to shoot through the door. In watching the video, the door was only open maybe a foot or so. So I don't know what angle he'd be shooting from, but if he was trying to shoot through the opening in the door and the window shattered, I don't know that was the case. So again, we're not throwing stones at that particular part of it so much as I just want to talk a little bit about shooting through barriers in general. What you have to know is that if you're shooting through glass, it will affect where your rounds go. It will affect. There's no like, well, maybe it will. No, it will absolutely affect where your bullets go. And it's very unpredictable. So best case, if you have to shoot someone through glass, through a window or a windshield of a car or something like that, you want them to be very close to that barrier. One of the worst case scenarios is if I am inside a car shooting through the windshield of my car and the guy is outside, because I'm influencing that bullet really, really early, right? In its flight path to the guy. That's different than, let's say I'm outside of the car and I need to shoot in the car, like a driver, let's say, and we know that the driver's seat is only a couple of feet from that windshield that's going to be hit on the way, right? So the distance to the target from the glass is the variable that I really care about if I have to shoot through glass. Obviously, you have to consider things like innocent bystanders and what if I miss, because odds are good you're going to miss. And that also means you need to be ready for follow-up shots. If you're shooting through something like a car windshield, if you fire the first couple rounds and they miss, usually by the third or fourth round, the glass will be weakened enough that it won't influence your round performance as much as those first couple shots.
And that's why we train. Right? That's why you have to go to the range and shoot and see what different windows do, what different angles do, and what different distances do. Now, I'm not a SWAT sniper. I don't claim to be, but consider a couple options here. Have some other means to take the glass out of play if you can. That might be a second shooter, shooting just at the glass. That might be somebody raking the glass out of the window. That might be a drone that can break glass if such a thing existed. That might be explosives that you set up around the window before they walk up to it. Each one of those has pros and cons and risks and etc. And again, that's why you exercise. So you know exactly how long it's going to take. You know exactly what the parameters are for success. Most law enforcement precision rifles are bolt action guns. But there are now several instances in the history of hostage rescue where immediate follow-up shot would have been really helpful. Several instances that I can think of off the top of my head. This one, Munich. Maybe that means having more snipers, have more people on gun who can take those follow-up shots. Maybe that means have a semi-auto gun so you can go bang, 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 right? And I realize it's more complicated than that, but at the end of the day, sometimes it's exactly that simple.
Yeah, in fact, in this one, so again, it's on video, right? So you see the window shatter of the glass door, and you see the guy react to it. And then he runs behind like a pillar and he starts shooting hostages as he's running away. And, again, I don't know, but maybe he would have had an opportunity for a follow-up shot sooner if he had a semi-auto gun. Now, sure, the precision might be affected there, but it depends on how much precision you're looking at. You're shooting through glass, right? You already have a precision problem by default. So the other big thing to consider here is bullet choice. If you're using a light hollow point rifle round, like a 55 grain hollow point out of a AR-15, 223 or 5.56, that round is going to break apart and it's really easy to influence compared to a bonded 308 round. Your bonded 308 round is going to go through the window, the bad guy, the people behind the bad guy, a couple walls, and lodge itself somewhere, in Neptune, if depending on what you're shooting into beyond the target, right? So bullet choice is a factor here. And just because we're talking generally about shooting through barriers, one thing to think about if you're a police officer is there's a lot of videos out there of guys shooting through their windshield at people. And I'm not saying never. In fact, just a few short weeks ago, we had this come up where we damn near needed to shoot a guy through our windshield on a SWAT thing. But so never say never. But as a general principle, get the F out of your car. Get out of your car, right? You're more effective at fighting than in that kill box. So get out of it. Again, if you got to shoot through glass, make sure your target is close to it. So if you are shooting from inside of a car, it really only applies to someone standing right outside of your car, like at your bumper. Anything farther than that, you're really losing accountability of where those rounds are going to go. So I think that's all I got, Jim, on the 91 Good Guys hostage rescue appliance store shooting.
I think it's a cool case study. I think it's worth doing more investigation of. Hopefully from this, you'll be inspired to go learn more about it. And that's one of the things that we're shooting for when we do these case studies. Key lessons, understanding the decision-making process, understanding that you have to exercise hostage rescue specifically, the terminal ballistics or the intermediate ballistics of bullets and barriers, and this philosophical or doctrinal concept of the doomed hostage, and how it affects your decision making, I think is big. And also, it's you. Until it's somebody else, it's you who's going to have to deal with it. So get up for it.
True story. All right, guys, that's all we got for tonight. This episode is brought to you by Drip Drop. Drip Drop Oral Rehydration Solution is an electrolyte powder that you mix with water. It was formulated by a doctor for quick absorption. I work in the desert, and it only takes a few hours in the heat, wearing body armor, carrying around a bunch of gear before I start feeling like crap and fall behind the curve in dehydration. Drip Drop keeps you in the fight so you can finish the mission and rehab for the next one. Go get you some at dripdrop.com or on Amazon, or ask your supply guy to find it for you.
This episode is also brought to you by Dry Fire Mag. Ammo is hard to find these days, and you need to stay proficient by working your dry fire training. Dry Fire Mag solves the common and annoying problem in dry fire of constantly having to rack your slide to reset the trigger. With Dry Fire Mag, all you do is clear your weapon, load this training mag up, and work on your trigger work. Check them out on dryfiremag.com.
Don't forget that we put out new episodes on the 1st and the 15th of every month. If you like what we're doing, you can have our Patreon. Give us $1 for each new episode. That money's going to go back into bringing you good content. If If you want to interact with us, you could find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are at TacTangents. You can also email info@tacticaltangents.com. And one last thing, our Facebook discussion group. We've got a little group going on Facebook. If you go to the groups tab on our page, you can join it. We've got more followers on our page than we have in the group. So I know there's some of you out there following the Facebook page that are on Facebook that are not in the group. Lots of like-minded people in there. So come hang out with us. All right. That's all we got. Good talk.